Okay, kids, we were wanted to talk a little bit about this this pattern for my sides and how to make this. So the idea here is, as you're looking at this, there's a thickness at the back, which is how tall your guitar is at the end block. That thickness is going to head this way and then start bending. And then it's going to bend around, and it's going to bend into the waist. And I always mark my waist on my patterns. And that's going to bend out and bend back this way into the block, which is going to be here. So you'd have your block, and that gets glued to it and bends like so. But to make your pattern, all you need to do is find out what and you should have this information when you measuring the guitar that you're going to build a copy of. You want to know what the thickness at the end block is and what the thickness at the neck block is. We talked about that. But I would also, I don't know that I mentioned, and it'd be a good idea to also take a measurement at the waist to see what that dimension is. Because as you can see, your pattern is going to curve down to the thinnest part of the guitar at the neck, back up to the thickest part. The top, this part, stays flat. When you build your pattern, you want to keep one flat surface, and that represents the top. And the back side is the part that's tapered. So all the tapering goes on the back side. You don't taper the top of it. Now there's an arch in it, which we talked about when you're building your top. But that taper from the thickest part of the guitar to the thinnest part. So you know your measurements, you know what your body's going to be at the neck, you know what your body's going to be at the butt end. We talked about that. But then at the waist, I don't think I mentioned, it's a good idea to take a measurement there and just have that information. Now when you build your pattern, this pattern that we're going to use, add whatever that dimension, let's say it's 4 inches at the butt, add 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch to that, and do the same at the neck, and do the same at where the waist is going to be. But again, you have to kind of think three-dimensionally. This is going to come this way, and then it's going to curve around, so it stays the same thickness at the back up till it starts to get to the waist. So pretty much all the body, the main part of the body, is the same thickness. But then when you start to approach the waist, that's when it starts to taper down. And that's what this pattern represents, if you can see that there's a taper down. And then again, at this end, it's pretty straight for a while because it's coming straight this way before it bends this way. So you got to think again in 3 dimensions, and you're going to have a point here and a point here where you're not going to taper anymore, but just draw a straight line between those 2 points. And you got to kind of visualize how that would work. But because we built this 3/8 to 1/2 inch taller than what we need, then when we get our sides bent and get them in the mold, then we're going to have excess that we're going to plane down. And our blocks we've already cut to our size, so you're going to plane down to those 2 blocks, and then we're going to make this taper. So that's the next thing I'm going to show you here. My block is this high, and my sides then are higher than that, and the same's true down at this end. I've got plenty of side above my 2 blocks. Now my blocks were glued in, if you remember, down against my flat surface. And this flat surface down here is my top. So this is the back that has the arch in it, or the taper in it. So get a little hand plane. This is the Lee Nelson I don't know what number 102. I think it's what they call it, low angle block. The low angle block plane. I love this thing. They're $120 or something. But boy, it's the cat's meow. If you bought one plane, this would be the plane to buy. So now we're going to come here and we're going to start planing this stuff down. Kind of want to watch which way your grain's running, because like on this, it's better coming this way because I'm going across my grain than this way. I'm going into the grain and it's leaving a more of a ragged edge. But then down here at this point it's plain and fine. There I'm going into the grain this way, I'm going with the grain. So all I'm trying to do here initially is get down to getting close to where my blocks are. Okay, I'm getting real close here to being level with my two blocks, and that's exactly what I want to be. So I'm going to come across here. Usually if I take a couple swipes off of this side, I'm going to do the same over here. Try and keep my height the same. So there I'm flush, all but flush. I got just a hair more to go there, but there we go, we're flush. Now I take, again, I'm going to talk about if it looks right, it is. Sorry, no numbers here, but look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my square, my adjustable square, and this block from my table to the top of the block is this tall now. I want that to be the same on my sides, which in his case that's right on. So, and I don't want there to be a dip here. I want all of this to be right on that, which this all looks great. Clear around to, now let's look over here. Now this one's tall. See, I'm not hitting at the bottom there. So this side looks pretty good. This side's tall. I'm going to find out where it's tall at. That's pretty good, but starting right in here, it's going to be a little tall. So I'm just going to work that. Take a few passes. See what I've got. Still tall. Still a couple more. So there we go. That looks pretty darn good. That's good. Good. That's right there. And all those are good. Clear around to about here. And at this point, where we're going to start. This point's where we're going to start our taper down. So again, all of this area is whatever this is. I think it's 4 inches on this, but I want that to come around to about there and all be the same height, which it is. That all looks good. right to there. I want to take this one more steam off of there. There we go. So that all looks good. On both of these, at the same point across from each other, they are the same height off of my workbench, so I know those are all the same. Does that make sense? So again, I'm using this as my original measurement. I know that's what I wanted, so all of this is referenced off of there. I don't have to sit here and take measurements on this. Does that make sense? Okay. So now at this point, we're gonna head down to point B, from point A down to point B. So I'm still a little proud here on my neck block, so I'm going to start taking this down. Good. Okay. Now I'm going to start doing the same thing here. Take a straight edge. Now this is a little different than the back. The back, all that looks great, and we know because we measured that. But here, you can, if your sides here are higher than this block, when you glue your back on, you're going to have a divot here. Now, so we want to make sure that by putting a straight edge across this block, that we're not tall here and here, which I am. I hope you can see that, but I want these sides at this point, right at the end of this neck block, I want those to be absolutely straight across with that. So I know I have to take both of those down a bit. So I'm going to work this. And then I'm also going to use my adjustable square here. And that's roughly where I want to be on that space. That's pretty close. That one's still tall. I'm going to take a bit off that. Again, take your straight edge now. Here we're flush because we can feel that we're flush on our block. But as we slide up on our block this way, I'm still tall. I still have a gap under there. See, I've got that much of a gap, so I got to take more down. So, but I don't want to go low here. Again, I want all of this area wants to be just flat here, and then you're going to start your curve up. So, again, that even right here, I'm still high off of my block. So, I'm going to take a little bit more right down to there, on both sides. Like, alrighty, still even right out in here, we're a little tall. Yep, getting closer, looking good. And then I might come back and come down to that, make that taper again, and then that's going to be our final little bit of business, is do those two and get those right. Getting there. Oh, that's really close. Oh my gosh, I love it. I can live with that. That's right. So now I'm not going to have any dip when I glue my back onto this block. That's going to all be nice and smooth right there. And we can double check our two sides. We can say right at this point, it's that tall, and that's perfect. Those are both exactly the same. Now we can start to try and figure out our curve down. So if I go right here to my spacer and go straight across to my other spacer, boy, this one's just a little higher than this one. So I take a swipe off of that, and I'm going to do the same on the back side of my spacer and push that down. and come my spreader. I mean, not a spacer. But boy, those are just both exactly where I want them to be. Now, for my final approach on this, I like to look at the guitar from this angle, and eyeball what's going on. I can see this. I want to take a little bit off of from that angle. I want to smooth that transition in just a bit. That looks really good. In other words, what I'm looking for there is that my transition down is the same. You can tell if one seems to be higher and the other lower, that sort of thing. Just by, you're going to eyeball this straight line. So I like everything I've got there, except for I want to do a little bit of a transition on those two areas right there. Just to smooth that out a bit. Coming out of this surface. Nice. Okay, I like it. I like everything about it. Yeah, I might hit that just a hair right there. But you can see a lot by looking at it from this angle, where you're looking straight down across that. And if it looks right, it's going to be right, because there's conformity here. Everything looks the same. It's like a little roller coaster, and it's doing the same on both sides, and we know this is all the same because we measured off of the back of that. So there we go. I'm real happy with where this is at and the way it looks. I've got my two blocks. They were glued in down to the top of the workbench, so we know the height is proper on these 2 points. Now we're connecting line A to line B, block A to block B. And that taper looks great. And again, to double check ourselves, we can measure off of our workbench, because that's going to stay the same, and we want those guys to be the same at that point, which they look great. And you can do that all the way around. So there's the simple process, and it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever your skill level is, but not a long time to get this down, and with a nice plane. And again, boy, these are beauties. I highly recommend this guy. But there's a lot of good alternatives on the market for these small low angle block planes, but boy, they are handy. Learn how to sharpen it, and it makes quick work of this part of the guitar. So again, our top, the top of the guitar is flat. And we're going to, when we glue our top on, we glue all that flat, except for this 1.5 degrees here, which is negligible when we get to that point. That'll take that curve perfectly. And now we've got our back with our arch in it, just like we want. Okay, kids, here we go. We're going to glue in our linings here. These happen to be mahogany linings. And they are triangular shaped. They've got a flat surface and then a bevel on them. They're not exactly triangular. I think they call these standard linings. This shape was pretty standard for years and years. They now make them to where you can use, have your kerf on the inside. This is the kerf showing, obviously. But whatever you choose, it'll be fine. You hear all sorts of things about the linings. Oh, it has to be a solid lining, or it has to be, the inside linings, the kerf on the inside, the kerf on the outside, all that stuff. Take it all with a grain of salt. Ask yourself, gee, wonder what kind of linings Bob Dylan had on those early songs of his that he wrote. That's the point. The lining's not the point. Nobody cares about the linings. It's the joy the instrument brings. It's the energy that you impart into your guitar that makes somebody want to play it and makes them want to write really groovy songs. That's the purpose. Nobody ever shed a tear because there were solid linings in a guitar. Anyway, don't get me started. here we go. You're going to take your linings and you're going to glue them in, and you're going to come around. You can fit them in here, and you're just going to break this at the closest point to your end block. And they break real easily. As a matter of fact, they break too easily. You got to be careful. And then, I don't know if you can see here, I've got a whole big box of little clamps. So we're going to take our tight bond. We're going to jump in here. So now, again, you're just going to run your lining around, break it at the other end, and here we go. We're going to do a little at a time on this. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself with putting the whole thing with glue on it. So I just do a bit at a time. Make sure I get a nice spread on my glue, like so. And then I'm going to start at my neck block right here. And I want this to feel flush with my neck block and my sides. And then I'm just going to start in here. And you're going to start clamping. Now, you've probably seen, and these work just fine, the old laundry hanger-uppers. What do they call them? Laundry pins. But they work great. You know, there's a lot of different things you can use here. But as you go, just make sure you're following your top edge, which we just spent time making this transition and making that all look good. So we don't want to go messing that up by having our linings be way above that or way below it, because these linings is what you're going to glue your back and tops to. So, you know, follow your contour exactly as you can. There we go. A little bit more I can go yet. When I get to this, this is not a very tight turn on this waist. So when I get to this, it'll bend pretty easily. But on like the smaller guitars where your waist is tighter, you sometimes those will break. Just fit them back in and make them look, you know, like they weren't broken as best you can. And then when you get to the big bend, you might want to I've got some clamps that are a little bit stouter than some of the others, and I'll often use those if I'm having a really tight bend, like right here's the tightest part, so I'll put a little heavier clamp on that. Again, this is a fairly gentle curve on this big dreadnought, so it's not a big deal. This doesn't have to be overly glued by any means. These linings, the cumulative effect of gluing these in this way, there's no way it's ever going to tear up, because that's where your pressure in theory would be, and that just ain't going to happen. So don't think you have to over glue these things. If you have a little less glue, actually it's easier to clean up your ooze. If you get a lot of glue in there, you're going to have a lot of glue ooze, and then you got to go back and clean all that up. So just a nice painting of the of the lining is going to be perfect. There's a little thing there. Put a heavier guy on there, coming around the bend. Again, I want that to be down there with the rest of that, so I'm going to put a heavier one on there. And one more in there. There we go. Now, if our lining should happen to get up above our edges on our sides, we can plane them back down to match again. So, but it's fairly straightforward. You just saw me do that. It was pretty darned easy. Now I'm going to do the next side. So we're going to come in here, measure it, careful not to break it, come around the corner, find a place to break it. There you go. And then we're going to start in right where we did the others. Now this is our back linings. These are the linings you're actually going to see. Generally people aren't going to see the top linings, but when you look in the sound hole you're going to see your back lining. So this is the part you want to try to keep it one piece. You want it to look nice, because that's going to be visible from through the sound hole. On your top, you're never really going to see that unless you put a mirror in the guitar, which most people aren't going to do. So you can be a little sloppier there. Not that you want to be sloppy, but like if you had some leftover pieces, like I keep all these little pieces, and sometimes I'll use those, just line them up, and I'll do that on my top because again, nobody's going to notice those. Here I'm wanting this to be flat with everything, which that looks good. Now one of my students I had, and he's still a good friend, and he comes by often, and we talk about guitar building, but I always tease him because when he was doing this, he would always pick out the colors to match. So he'd have all blue and all green and all yellow, and I think that probably made his guitar sound better. But whatever theory you want to ascribe to any of this sort of stuff, be my guest. And I'm sure Tom won't mind me telling that story on him. I think it's a fun story. Tom's gone on to build a lot of guitars for his family, friends and family, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're not talking about going into production and being like, Martin or Collings or any of those guys. If that's what you're after, this probably isn't the video series for you. This is for the guys that just want to have fun, build a few guitars for friends and family, be realistic about what your expectations are for these things. They're for you to play. If you're a young man, one day you'll play songs to your grandchildren on these guitars, and you'll say, I built that guitar when I was your age. And if you're an old man, you already got grandkids, and you'll get to build it for them to listen to you sing silly songs, and maybe they'll grow up to be guitar players, and they'll want you to build them a guitar, and you will be so proud to be able to build your grandbabies a guitar. I had an uncle that when he was a young man, he built a bow, an archery bow, And I always thought that was the coolest thing, that he had done that. And he only built the one that I know of, but he was a good archery shooter apparently. But maybe that's where I got my love of building things, was thinking, my gosh, you can do stuff like that. You can build things with your own two hands. He was the same uncle that would tell us kids when we'd eat supper at his house. He would say, now, I want you kids to eat every piece of meat and pee on your plate. And we would laugh. We thought that was so funny. So how could you not like a guy like that? And then he built bow and arrows on top of that. You're going to go like, all right, I want to do that. Alrighty, there you go, kids. I don't know how long that took. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But there we go. We'll leave those dry, and then we'll push this through the other side so it's sticking up, and we'll put linings on the top, and then we're going to put some braces in here. But after that, we're ready to glue our top and back to that. So look at how far we've come fairly easily. Not a lot of big heavy machinery, just little understanding how all this stuff works. It's a puzzle, and we're learning how to put it together. So there's that. I'm going to do the other set of sides now, and then I'll show you some pictures. Now, I wanted to say this real quick. Now's the time to pull your guitar up this way and clean up your glue ooze from underneath. And do that again before it gets dry. It's a very easy thing to do. Just come around and get it all. There we go. That looks pretty good. So there's the guitar with the linings from the inside. And there's our kerfed linings glued on. Okay, kids, if you like and use or find these videos interesting, educational, informative, or maybe just entertaining because you're up late at night, we'd love to have you support us. There's a few ways you can do that. One is click the subscribe button below. That helps YouTube know what we're doing and that we're serious about this. Also, you can hit that bell icon, which tells you when the next videos are coming out. We're going to try and get at least one out a week now that we're up and running here. Also, a good way to support us is become a patron over at our Patreon account. And again, there's a link below for that. Patreon's a cool way that you can sign up and give, $5 a month or $10 or whatever you feel is worth it. If you're using these videos to actually build a guitar and find it interesting and fun, please support us through Patreon. That's I wish I could do this completely for free, but it takes money and time away from my other regular job. So it's a big undertaking, and any support you could send this way is great. So it's all been very fun so far for me, and I hope you guys are having fun at this as well, and we greatly appreciate all your support, so thanks.